Thank you for inviting me into Studio 54 with you for where the Rocky Horror Show is playing on Broadway. Well placed at Studio 54, don't you think?
Yeah, the perfect. We couldn't ask for a better theater.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So you guys designed the costumes and the sets with the collective dots. So take me back to when you first sat down with director Sam Pinkleton. What was the vision for this Rocky Horror?
I think for us it was really acknowledging that, you know, the Rocky Horror Show has been around for 53 years and is known and loved. And we really want to lean into that. I don't think we were trying to reinvent the wheel. We just wanted to do the Rocky Horror Show the way we wanted to and the way we all know and love it, and we're all big fans, and we really just wanted to pay homage to the material.
I think the idea of ensuring that what we were providing for it also felt like it came from a place of honoring that and showing love for it and appreciation for it as well. I think that really felt like the North Star.
And also push a little.
Yeah, and I think then it's finding our own ways to show how much we love it. And in an early meeting with Sir Howard Panter, who is one of the fantastic executive producers of the show, he just reminded us that at its heart, the Rocky Horror Show is just a trashy little musical. Yeah. So we really, I think, clung to that in our material choices and just the way that the space is set up. We really wanted to keep the rawness of the piece alive.
It's a work that oftentimes invites a sense of almost like a DIY. I want to participate in it in a way that feels like I have brought something of myself to it. Audiences tend to do that.
Yeah.
And we wanted to have that spirit in the production, that it felt like it was something that is made out of materials that you recognize, but maybe is sort of shown in a way that feels sort of fun and an invitation to play.
It's so funny because when you say DIY, I think about how audiences, they come dressed up, they're very glittery, they're very ready to participate in whatever way they want, but it's still Broadway, right? So there's got to be some balance between the spectacle of Broadway and what that means to audiences and the sort of trashy little show aspect of it. So tell me about finding that balance.
Sam said a really smart thing, that it was about the materials. You know, it should be cheap and it should be accessible, but it should be beautiful to us and beautiful to the characters. So I think that was a really important thing of like how to take things that are accessible and sort of Party City in a fun way, but make them really feel Broadway and feel like, and I think this really comes to the fore in the floor show section at the end of the show, where it's really this thing that Frank-N-Furter made, and it's beautiful to him and therefore beautiful to us.
It almost feels like some of these costumes are found. They're very, very much like of the environment. And I feel in some ways you might even be in conversation with the original costumes by Sue Blaine, but you also have to have the durability of 8 shows a week, right? This is a
Without
real
question.
magic trick you're doing.
And I think that's something that in that aspect of having materials that feel accessible or feel in some ways like, oh, is this made out of trash bags? We can't tell.
Right.
But there's finding that joy and the practicality of, certainly it's gonna hopefully run for some time, and we have 8 shows a week, and I think that wanting to ensure that nothing is ever encumbering the performers. When you think of Rocky Horror, you think of the characters, and you think of what they wear, and they're so iconic. Denying that or sort of trying to just strictly do an interjection for the sake of avoiding what's been known or sort of is already in our minds felt like a disservice. And so there are things that, you know, certainly feel referential to previous productions of Rocky Horror or even the film, but maybe what we talk about too is this idea of that almost putting these elements that we know and sort of throwing them all in a blender, and then maybe they arrive in sort of a different spaces.
So there are surprises for audiences.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
When you look at the show, you want to recognize that it's Rocky Horror, and yet as you start to kind of dissect the elements, maybe you start to see, oh, I'm not considered it in this way.
Okay, let's look at the costumes up close now.
Yes.
What do you want to show us?
Well, one thing you notice about some of the things here on this rack, there is kind of this greenish tone to some of these things, and that came from, in the film, Tim Curry is wearing a sort of a green lab coat. And sort of taking that green color and sort of maybe as a point of departure, but maybe not placing it necessarily in the lab, but as a point of departure even for the usherette And her costume felt like an interesting sort of nod to the film without necessarily being something that is entirely a replica of it. This is Juliette Lewis's costume. As you can see, it's almost a sort of rubbery, almost snake skin
Can I touch
material. So, you know,
wow.
there's something about it that still feels like it lives in its own world.
It's its own beast.
It's its own beast. But still, you know, I think we have these, you know, gold buttons and yet the sort of acid green piping is made by John Christensen and his shop. Did an incredible job. We also have some Easter eggs that I want to kind of point out to you that certainly may not be perceived by an audience and they're sitting in their seat, and that is okay. One thing that feels really important to me is to think about the humans who are wearing these costumes. And essentially, when I think about how when I go to put something on, there's a very personal experience in terms of putting something on, how it makes me feel. We've got this print that you can see has references to, there's King Kong, there's the Bride of Frankenstein, there's some tentacles, so if you know, you know. The robot from the Earth, when the Earths are still, and then of course a castle and some aliens.
So
That's
cool.
in there. This is Eddie's jacket, worn by Harvey Guillen. One thing
It
that
doesn't feel like it looks.
what did it feel like? What did it look like to you?
It
when you
looks
saw
like denim.
It is. So it's denim, but then it's been coated in
It's
this
coated, yeah.
kind of treatment to kind of give it a sense of it feeling like it's been in a freezer.
Right.
And sort of fully frostbitten. Both Harvey and I have Mexican heritage, and so it felt interesting to then have something that references the Loteria card of El Diablo, with essentially a mermaid that's sort of a Catrina.
How wonderful to bring the actor into the design.
That
It's
felt
so special,
important.
yeah.
Yeah. And then also a little Easter egg, we've got Meatloaf's birthday and death day,
Wow.
honoring, of course, Meatloaf. We've got Janet's dress. Just a contrast between something that feels a little bit more delicate versus something that is sort of more of a trash bag dress worn by Frank. And I think this sort of helps to kind of see the textures that we're after.
Let's talk about Frank-N-Furter for a second, because it's such an iconic character and people have an idea of what Frank-N-Furter is going to look like going in,
Yeah.
but you riffed on that.
Working with Luke has been so inspiring. I think knowing that Luke was going to be our Frank-N-Furter felt important to really establish a connection with him in terms of how he wanted to show up. And so we had very early on conversations in which we were really discussing what it was that felt really important to him in terms of feeling confident. Certainly when you think of the Rocky Horror, there is a quality in which you see that there are a lot of people in their skivvies. And if you think of yourself wanting to, you know, being on stage in sort of various states of undress, you would want to feel as confident and as secure. And so I think there's a lot of conversations that we had with all the performers, ensuring that whatever it is that they were wearing, they felt really, that they could sort of forget about it. That they could essentially just show up and just focus on their performance and what they wanted to bring, and also be transformed by what they were wearing. And so there are elements to Frank's costume that do feel that they're honoring the legacies of Frank-N-Furter, and yet some things that feel very specific to our production, and I think also very specific to Luke. We all wanted to insert this idea of almost there being humor to the way that maybe we think of how sometimes we can feel very glamorous sometimes in things that feel truly assembled from trash.
I mean, when you say trashy, we're going to the definition here.
I'm not kidding. These ribbons here are fully taken from trash bags, so that it really felt like this was something that was maybe assembled from some, you know, that there was a response to the material of it, and felt like, oh yeah, I could look incredible in this, and Luke certainly does.
Right, but this has to last longer than, say, Halloween night.
Oh, yes. And so the idea of having something that feels both very improvised and in some ways very ephemeral, and yet has the sustainability to be able to run 8-show week felt really important.
So beyond the sort of B-movies that you definitely delved into, I'm sure, where else did you look for inspiration?
Because the Rocky Horror Show does this really weird thing where it starts out as a spooky horror movie and then it becomes a sci-fi action alien story. You know, we did our good set designer like due diligence of like really digging into the context of like what an old castle would look like. So arming ourselves with that knowledge, but then really figuring out like how to twist it, how to make it Frank-N-Furter's house. And then it really was looking at the Hammer horror, particularly for us, which was such a strong reference to the creation of the piece. So that you really feel the genre is a thing that we were really leaning into. And then really feeling that kind of weird shift in genre as the show goes on, from spooky, kooky horror story to alien sex romp. And then obviously like really I think we never turned away from the film either. We really wanted to acknowledge and embrace it. You know, the live theater quality is something that's so special. And most people, I think, are familiar with the film and the experience of watching the film. And I think there is something new and different about watching it live with real humans doing the roles. And Sam always says such a smart thing, particularly when it comes to like the issue of period or whatever. But Sam's like, you know, theater's not real.
Right.
And I think in this case, we're really, you know, leaning into that, and we're showing the ropes that hang things up, and we're not trying to pretend that this is anything other than what it is.
Right, we see the seams of this production.
Yes.
And even when you walk in, there's definitely an HVAC problem in this castle.
Right. Yeah, we've subverted the HVAC system, and it's now directing life into Rocky, actually. For us, as scenic designers, we really wanted to tap into the energy of Studio 54, and there are moments in the show where we're like directly communing with the spirits of the building. And one of them is with the ductwork that you'll see all over the theater, which has this like crazy green rope light that's extending all the way from the back of the house, and it ultimately leads to Rocky's tank. And it was like a really important piece of storytelling for us, actually, that is like this building is giving life to the show.
And when you walk in, you're in that world immediately. You step through the door and you're in that world.
Yeah, we've been trying to do a gentle transition from the street to the theater, but then we kind of decided that gentleness has no place at Studio 54.
Here we are.
Yeah, welcome in.
Welcomed by the disco ball of Studio 54.
Yeah, this disco ball was just natively here, which was thrilling to us, so we didn't really have to. And truthfully about Studio 54, we really didn't have to do much to tap into its just the most gorgeous, weathered, crumbling, beautiful theater, and we could not have asked for a better home.
And you can see, even in this little tiny vestibule when you walk in, there's some little Easter eggs, some dressing. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we've added posters that are vintage sci-fi posters, but they're all movies that are mentioned in Science Fiction Double Feature by the Usherette in the opening song, and we really wanted to, you know, announce that this is the tone and this is where we are. And obviously this pink light, and we'll talk about the lighting journey as we move on, but you know, there's no doubts when you enter the lobby where you are and what you're about to see. We saw a tweet by an audience member the other day that said the front of house looked like we'd robbed a Spirit Halloween, and that was a compliment, and we really love that.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is dots.
Sure, yeah.
Because you are just one of this design collective, and I want to know what that means exactly.
Sure, yeah. So we're a collective of 3 set designers, and we got together during the pandemic, during a time when we were unemployed, and we really just had a minute to like think through how we wanted to offer ourselves to the industry and how we could maybe find a better way of working. We found a lot of success in being able to riff off of each other and not just be the sole person. I think it's so easy to get swept up in yourself being connected to the work, and I think for us to be working on a thing that's bigger than any of us individually is so special and been so meaningful, and I think really helping us work in a way and balance our lives that just works. It's been really wonderful.
So you got to riff with your cohort in Dots about some of the things that we're even walking through right now.
For sure, yeah, and I think it's like really, it's when you're alone, you're like, oh my God, is it a crazy decision to wrap this beautiful thing in tin foil? And then when there's 3 of you, you can be like, no, that's a great idea.
There's a lot of foil in this
There is a
theater.
lot of tin foil in this theater, which is really leaning into the kind of like crafty DIY but beautiful aesthetic that the whole show is aiming for. And this room in particular is a kind of the threshold, obviously, where we're entering the theater, we're meeting the ticket takers, but everything's spray painted silver, nothing's expensive. The pedestals are trash cans turned upside down that are spray painted. The chandeliers, we replaced all the lights with green in collaboration with our amazing lighting designer, Jane Cox. So that's really what we're trying to do with this room, is this really continue the transition from outside world into spooky, kooky space theater.
We're deeper.
We're deeper
in.
yeah.
And we have a friend.
We do. So part of our front of house kind of experience is introducing this cast of ghosts that inhabit Studio 54, which are our skeleton friends. And once again, they really are living the Party City aesthetic in a way that we lean into and really love. And obviously in this room, you can tell we've gone from a green lighting state to a pretty aggressive red world. And that part of that is really about like not letting you be comfortable or get used to the room that you're in. So we go from pink, then we're into green, then we're into red. And then by the time we've made it out of this room into the theater, we're like, well, we've already been on a roller coaster and we're ready for the show. Yeah, and Studio 54 just by itself has this kind of incredible sequence of threshold spaces from the street into the theater that we really needed to lean into and make a feature of and really help us in tone setting, which is so much of what scenery does, is setting the tone of the show.
So now we're really getting close to our seat. We've been through a lot,
Yeah.
and we haven't even gotten it into the theater yet completely.
Right. Yeah.
So what should we look out for as we're making our way to our seats?
So yeah, the Easter egg hunt in the building I think is a fun one, and we've really been specific and tried to be as thoughtful as we can about the things that we've included. Obviously there's the layer of adding fake cobwebs, which came from a Spirit Halloween, I believe. There's, which I actually now notice has gone missing. There previously was a pink glove, but the audience really love our things.
There are a lot of rubber gloves throughout.
Yeah.
You can look out for
So,
that.
and that comes from the film. Frank-N-Furter famously wears fun pink rubber gloves. So there's a bunch of custom pink rubber gloves with nails glued on, hidden around. Obviously this crazy HVAC ducting, which really factors in the play and leads into the set pretty aggressively. But I don't think there's a space that we've not touched. Obviously the red lips is like such an iconic Rocky Horror icon that we didn't want to replicate exactly, so we've hidden those in the bathrooms in a fun way. There's some Scott toilet paper for Dr. Scott.
How clever.
Sometimes the on-the-nose solution is the best solution. So obviously the ingredient that's missing in here right now is that usually this room is full of people in
Right.
costume, in makeup, buying drinks and having a good time. So that's the thing that we're not seeing, which is really a part of the design in an intentional way.
We have talked a lot about the set pieces in the show. We talked about the castle and the lab. There's something we haven't really talked about, which is the curtain, which plays an important role. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, the show is like very self-consciously a theater that is theater and not pretending to be something else. And so there's a lot of curtainography in the show, and we really love the fabric that we found for the curtains is something that we're specifically proud of and so happy about because it is the cheapest fabric that the supplier had. And Sam was pretty adamant that that should be the case, and I didn't want to lie to him, so I had to ask, listen, like, why do people use this for normally? And the sales rep said, I didn't know we even had that. So it's been such a boon to use this like really cheap and tacky, it's this black metallic velour that I don't think has an application outside of the Rocky Horror Show. But and the way Jane's been using it with light, it just changes color and it becomes shiny and it becomes plasticky. And it really, when we first built the model of the show, riffing through some concepts, we were actually using trash bags for the curtains. And we were like, we need to find a fabric that looks and feels like a garbage bag. And I think we did that in a way that we're really thrilled by.
I just want to reiterate one thing that both you and David have said, which is that you can do Rocky Horror in a slick way. You can do it really high end, and for some reason it doesn't work as well. And so these choices of having a very inexpensive material for the curtain or a trash bag for a costume, they're important decisions. It wasn't because you were low budget, it was because you were creating something that looked low budget. You know what I mean?
And I think it honors the spirit, the kind of like punk rock, anti-establishment spirit of the show that I think is so important. And it's that don't dream it, be it. Like you can be a garbage bag and still be the most gorgeous thing someone's ever worn. And that's a really important part of the show, I think.
Have you seen anyone in the audience who just caught your eye because people dress up and they are fully participating in this
every
show.
night.
So give me some of your
incredible
observations.
looks. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, some of them deserve an award. Last night, someone was dressed as
Just
a
a
hot
hot
dog,
dog.
which
Yeah.
was amazing. And it's so funny to
A plus,
find.
yeah.
It's like finding these like niche lines in the play.
Yeah.
One time, someone dressed as a mechanic with devil horns, which is like this satanic mechanic is like a throwaway line in Sweet Transvestite, and it just really shows how much people pay attention and listen to the words. And Richard O'Brien's lyrics are so wonderful and so genius. So it's so fun to see people like really embodying. The hot dog really was a
Right.
was a standout.
Good
There
one.
was an usherette the other day. It was spectacular. Someone yesterday had an amazing harness that was covered in rhinestones. You saw them,
Yeah,
I'm sure.
yeah, yeah.
Spectacular. You can see people start to gather even as they're before they get to the line, and you can tell who's coming to see the show. It's sort of this like, beacon that's sort of bringing this wonderful thing out of all of us as we gather here.